Welcome to the Philosophical Odysseys podcast. So I want you to imagine, if you will, that you are a Roman emperor.
Right, like you're literally the most powerful person on the planet.
Exactly. You command the greatest, most lethal military force on the face of the earth. But right now, you are confined to this mud-soaked, freezing tent on the northern frontier of the empire.
You're completely cut off from all the comforts of Rome.
Yeah, and it gets so much worse. Because you are slowly and painfully dying of a horrific strain of smallpox.
It's an absolute nightmare scenario.
Totally. Your empire is crumbling under the weight of a plague that has wiped out millions. Your own body is just failing you in the most agonizing way imaginable. So in that specific, terrifying scenario, how do you maintain absolute, unshakable peace of mind?
I mean, that is the ultimate stress test for any human psychology, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to be calm when you're meditating in a quiet, temperature-controlled room.
Oh, for sure.
But it's an entirely different biological feat to remain tranquil when your world and your physical body are just collapsing simultaneously.
And that's the visceral reality we are unpacking today. We are doing a deep dive into Donald Robertson's fascinating book, How to Think Like a Roman Emperor.
It's such a brilliant source.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is ambitious, but I think it's incredibly necessary. We want to rescue philosophy from the dusty, theoretical basement of academia.
Yeah, pull it right out of those dry textbooks.
Right. We want to put it to work as a practical, psychological survival kit for modern life. Because the tools we need to manage our anxiety, our grief, and our daily anger, well, they aren't new at all.
No, not even close.
They were forged and perfected 2,000 years ago in that freezing mud on the frontier.
We're going to decode the precise psychological mechanics of Stoicism today. And what is truly groundbreaking about this exploration is that we aren't just looking at historical events as some sort of, costume drama.
Like a History Channel special.
Exactly. We are going to look under the hood of human emotion to see how these ancient practices work on a neuropsychological level. We'll reveal how this exact ancient worldview directly birthed modern cognitive behavioral therapy.
Which is huge. But the entry point into this ancient toolkit actually starts with a deeply modern, deeply personal tragedy. Donald Robertson didn't stumble into Stoicism because he was just looking for a random elective in a university library.
No, it started with a profound loss.
Right. When Robertson was just 13 years old, his father died of lung cancer. And it wasn't a sudden, peaceful passing. His father had been bedridden, just deteriorating over the course of an entire year.
And for a 13-year-old boy, I mean, that prolonged exposure to a parent's mortality is completely devastating.
Yeah, he was totally unprepared for it. And so the grief essentially mutated into rage.
Which is a completely predictable psychological response for a child facing such a chaotic, uncontrollable environment. When the primary structure of your life collapses, your natural instinct is just to rebel against whatever remaining structures exist.
He describes this period of intense truancy, like he was staying out all night playing this dangerous game of cat and mouse with the local cops.
Just acting out in every way.
Exactly, breaking into buildings just to run away from them, getting into physical fights. The grief was manifesting as pure destruction.
It's heartbreaking, really.
By the time he was 16, his school essentially told him to leave before they officially expelled him. He was labeled a write-off by the adults around him. But the turning point, the thing that ultimately short-circuited this destructive loop, came from a single physical object left behind by his father.
Right, the worn leather wallet.
Yeah. After the funeral, his mother puts his father's old wallet on the dining room table and just tells Robertson to take it. He opens it up, expecting maybe a few bills or some photos.
Because his father was a digger driver, right? A humble guy who worked with his hands.
Right, exactly.
Right.
But there was no money inside. Instead, folded up in one of the pockets was this badly worn, frayed scrap of paper.
And what was on it?
It was a passage torn from the book of Exodus. Just 4 words, I am that I am.
Wow.
Yeah. Robertson stood there, staring at this paper, completely desperate to understand what on earth those words meant to his father and why he carried them every single day.
And that scrap of paper is basically the catalyst for his entire life's work. Because to understand the gravity of that phrase for his father, we have to look at the man's background as a Freemason.
Oh, right, the Masonic connection.
Yeah, specifically in the rites of a Masonic chapter called the Royal Arch, that phrase, I am that I am, is a pivotal, foundational response during initiation.
Interesting.
But for a man like his father, Freemasonry wasn't just, a social club or a secret handshake. The rites he practiced heavily celebrated the four cardinal virtues of ancient Greek philosophy.
Which are prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance, right?
Exactly. Or in the language we use today, wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation.
I really want to pause on those virtues for a second because they sound very grand, very statuesque. But in the context of a 20th century digger driver, they actually look incredibly practical.
They do. We are talking about a working-class man who lived these principles in the dirt and grime of daily life.
Yeah, Robertson notes that his father once turned down an inherited farm. He just walked away from property and wealth simply because he fundamentally believed that unearned money wouldn't bring him happiness.
And that it might actually compromise his character.
Exactly. That is temperance and fortitude in action.
It's the embodiment of philosophy as a spiritual way of life. That is the ancient view. Today, we treat philosophy as a theoretical study, like a set of logic puzzles to be debated on a whiteboard.
But for the ancients, and seemingly for Robertson's father, philosophy was a verb. It was a daily practice of character building.
So when Robertson finally got his life back on track and actually enrolled in university to study philosophy, he hit this massive wall of disillusionment.
He realized the university system had completely abandoned this ancient model, didn't he?
He really did. He makes a brilliant distinction in the book between warriors of the mind and librarians of the mind.
Oh, I love that comparison.
It's so good. The ancient practitioners, like Socrates or Marcus Aurelius, they were warriors of the mind. They were out in the public square, facing disease, dealing with corrupt politicians, figuring out how to face death with dignity.
But modern academics?
They've become librarians of the mind. They collate texts, they organize citations, they debate the semantic definition of the word courage in the basement of a library, completely safely hidden from the actual world.
It is the tragedy of modern academia. You can literally spend 10 years writing a PhD dissertation on Stoic ethics and still completely fall apart when someone cuts you off in traffic.
Exactly. The academic study of the map has entirely replaced the physical act of walking the territory.
It's like memorizing the manual of a treadmill without ever actually breaking a sweat.
That is the perfect analogy.
Right. You can sit there and recite the history of the incline feature, you know exactly how the magnetic motor operates, but your cardiovascular health is still terrible because you refuse to step onto the machine and run.
And Robertson wanted that Socratic art of living. He wanted the cardiovascular workout for the soul.
So finding that the university couldn't provide this practical manual for living, he pivoted. He moved away from academic philosophy and entered the world of psychotherapy.
He wanted a clinical setting where he could actually help people who were suffering, much like he had suffered as a teenager.
And the timing of his entry into psychotherapy is crucial because the field was undergoing a massive seismic shift right then.
Yeah, for decades, the dominant model had been Freudian psychoanalysis.
Right. The whole cliche of lying on a couch, talking about your childhood, trying to interpret your dreams to find some hidden subconscious trauma.
And Freudian psychoanalysis definitely has its place in the history of psychology. But its limitation is that it doesn't give you a practical tool in the moment of crisis.
Yeah, like if you are having a panic attack right before a public speaking event, exploring how your mother treated you when you were 4 years old does not stop the surging cortisol and adrenaline in your bloodstream right then and there.
Exactly. That's where cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, stepped in and completely revolutionized the field.
And CBT relies on something called the cognitive theory of emotion. Let's break down the mechanics of that because this is the bridge back to the ancient world.
Okay, so the cognitive theory of emotion posits that our emotional responses are not directly caused by external events. Instead, they are caused by our underlying beliefs and judgments about those events.
I want to make sure we really nail this concept for you, the listener. So if I am walking down the street and it starts pouring rain and I get furious, my heart rate spikes, I'm miserable, I blame the rain, I think the rain made me angry.
But the rain is just water falling from the sky. It has absolutely no emotional valence.
Right.
A farmer in the middle of a drought might stand in that exact same rainstorm and weep tears of joy. The external event is identical.
So the physiological response, my anger versus the farmer's joy, is entirely dictated by the internal belief.
Yes. You believe the rain is a bad thing that is ruining your outfit. The farmer believes the rain is a good thing saving their crops. The belief generates the emotion.
And this isn't just a retroactive comparison Robertson is drawing to make Stoicism look modern, is it?
Not at all. The actual pioneers of these modern therapies, Albert Ellis, who developed rational emotive behavior therapy, and Aaron T. Beck, the father of CBT, explicitly cited Stoic philosophers as their direct inspiration.
Wait, really? They literally cited them.
Oh yeah. Beck wrote quite literally that the philosophical origins of cognitive therapy can be traced back to the Stoics. They realized that 2,000 years ago, these guys had already mapped the source code of the human mind.
That's insane. Think of it like a software engineer debugging an app that keeps crashing. Freudian therapy is like trying to figure out who manufactured the phone's microchip 15 years ago.
Yeah, good luck with that in a crisis.
Right. While CBT is like going straight into the source code, finding the specific line of faulty logic, say, a line that reads, if someone ignores me, my survival is threatened, and just rewriting it.
And the Stoics were the original software engineers.
But here's the limitation of modern CBT that Robertson realized. We usually treat CBT as a short-term remedial fix.
Yeah, you go to a therapist for 12 weeks to deal with a specific phobia of spiders or a bout of postpartum depression.
You rewrite the code for that one specific glitch, and then you just stop going to therapy.
Because modern therapy is inherently modest. It seeks to return you to a baseline of normal functioning. But Robertson started reading the work of a French philosopher named Pierre Hadot.
He specialized in ancient spiritual exercises, right?
Yes. And Hadot's work prompted this massive revelation for Robertson. He thought, what if we didn't just use these cognitive tools for 12 weeks to fix aspirophobia?
What if we adopted them as a permanent, lifelong operating system? Let's apply that to a really common modern glitch for you listening to this social anxiety.
Oh, it's a perfect example.
Imagine walking into a networking event or giving a presentation and feeling that crushing weight in your chest, the sweaty palms, the desperate urge to flee. The biological threat response is firing on all cylinders.
But according to the cognitive theory of emotion, that anxiety isn't caused by the other people in the room.
Right. It's caused by the underlying belief that their judgment is highly valuable and that being disliked by them is a catastrophic, dangerous, bad thing.
Exactly. To experience social anxiety, you literally must hold the core belief that your status in the eyes of others is vital to your well-being.
So the anxiety is simply your nervous system responding logically to that underlying premise.
Yes, if your brain believes status equals safety, then a threat to your status triggers the exact same biological alarm as a physical predator jumping out of the bushes.
So if you adopt Stoicism as a lifelong philosophy, you don't just try to manage the sweaty palms, you go deep into the architecture of your values.
You rigorously train yourself to deeply, truly accept the premise that the opinions of others are fundamentally outside of your control.
And therefore, they cannot harm your moral character. And if you actually change that core value, does the anxiety just evaporate?
It has to. If you truly rewrite the line of code that says status equals safety, the biological alarm system loses its trigger.
Because the threat no longer exists in your cognitive framework.
Exactly. So the amygdala stops flooding your body with stress hormones. You can stand in front of a completely hostile crowd, and because you do not value their arbitrary judgment, your heart rate remains totally steady.
It's profound, but understanding that intellectually in a deep dive is the easy part. Actually living it, actually rewiring that code so deeply that it holds up under the ultimate pressure, that requires an entirely different level of commitment.
It really does.
And to see what that lifelong psychological resilience actually looks like in practice, we have to return to that mud-soaked tent in Vindobona. We have to look at Marcus Aurelius.
Okay, so the year's 180 AD. Vindobona is roughly where modern-day Vienna sits. This is the jagged edge of the Roman Empire, a miserable, freezing military encampment.
And Marcus Aurelius has been fighting these brutal, exhausting border wars against Germanic tribes for years.
But the wars are secondary to the real nightmare here.
Yeah, the Antonine Plague. Historians now strongly suspect this was a devastating strain of smallpox. It had been tearing through the Roman world for 14 years. We're talking about an apocalyptic scenario.
Up to a third of the population in some areas was just wiped out.
The economy is in ruins, the army is decimated, and now the emperor himself has contracted it.
And we really have to understand the visceral horror of smallpox to appreciate Marcus's state of mind here. This isn't just fading away peacefully in your sleep.
No, it involves high fevers, vomiting, and the eruption of agonizing pustules over the entire body, even inside the mouth and throat,
making it incredibly painful to even drink a sip of water.
His physician, the famous Galen, is in the camp. And Galen notes the fatal symptom. He records that Marcus's feces have turned black, which is a clinical indicator of severe internal intestinal bleeding.
The ulcerations have actually reached his digestive tract. It is a definitive death sentence.
There is no cure, there is no hope of recovery. The camp is naturally descending into complete panic. The emperor's inner circle knows the end is near, and the political instability that will follow is terrifying.
The environment is pure chaos, pain, and fear. Yet the historical sources report that Marcus himself is remarkably, almost unnervingly tranquil.
He isn't raging against the dying of the light. He isn't weeping for his lost empire.
No, not at all.
There is this incredibly cinematic detail Robertson includes here. Marcus is lying there, isolated to prevent spreading the infection, just listening to the fluid building in his own lungs.
Such a striking image.
And beside his bed is a small, polished golden statuette of the goddess Fortuna, and in the reflective surface of that gold, he catches a glimpse of his own sick, aging face.
And he performs this deliberate mental exercise.
Right. He superimposes his reflection over the faces of the great omnipotent men who held his title before him. Augustus, who founded the imperial system, the great builder Hadrian, his own beloved adoptive father Antoninus Pius.
He visualizes this lineage of absolute godlike power, and he asks himself a simple question. Where are they now?
And his internal response is chillingly calm. He says, nowhere. Or at least nowhere of which we can speak.
He is acknowledging his own total erasure.
It's astounding. The man is bleeding internally, staring into the abyss of his own non-existence. And he's using it as a meditation prompt. He isn't spiraling.
Because he has spent decades preparing for this exact moment. He is executing a technique the Stoics called the premeditation of adversity.
He hasn't just lived a life of luxury.
No, he has actively daily rehearsed the loss of his health, the betrayal of his friends, and the inevitability of his own death.
Socrates warned that most people treat death like a prankster in a scary mask, right? Like a bogeyman designed to frighten children.
Yes, but Marcus has spent a lifetime methodically walking up to the bogeyman, lifting the mask, and observing the empty space beneath it. He has quite literally exhausted his brain's capacity to fear it.
He actually takes control of his final days by refusing food and drink, calmly observing his own symptoms as a natural philosopher might observe the decay of a fallen log in the forest.
And then he speaks his final enigmatic words.
Yeah. The guards outside his tent are nervous. They are demanding the daily password from the tribune. The tribune enters, asks Marcus for the password, and Marcus replies, "Go to the rising sun, for I am already setting."
I am already setting. It is a profound poetic acceptance of the natural cycle of the cosmos.
He doesn't view his death as a cosmic injustice at all.
He doesn't view the plague as an evil entity targeting him. It is simply the sun setting.
Because the Stoics' primary objective in life is to live in alignment with nature. Nature dictates that all biological organisms eventually fail and decompose.
To fight that, to be angry about it, is to be irrational.
But, let me play devil's advocate here for a second, because to a modern ear, I am already setting and refusing food sounds a lot like giving up. It sounds like depression. How is this profound acceptance different from just surrendering to despair?
It's a really vital distinction to make. Despair is characterized by emotional agony. When you give up out of depression, you are crushed by the belief that you have lost something immensely valuable, and the pain is intolerable.
Right.
Marcus is experiencing zero emotional agony regarding his death. He isn't surrendering because he is broken. He is yielding because he recognizes his role in the play is concluded.
He hasn't lost anything valuable.
Exactly. Because to a Stoic, the only truly valuable thing is virtue, your own moral character. His body is dying, but his character remains perfectly intact. It's unconquered.
To reach a point where you genuinely don't view your own painful death as a bad thing requires a fundamental tectonic shift in how you assign value to the universe. You have to completely rewire your internal valuing system.
And to understand the architecture of that rewiring, Robertson takes us away from Marcus, dialing the clock back 500 years to the very inception of the philosophy.
We have to travel to the Eastern Mediterranean, to the story of a merchant named Zeno of Citium.
Yes. Zeno was a wealthy Phoenician merchant, and his business was transporting cargo.
Specifically, a cargo of royal purple dye. Now, we need to contextualize what purple meant in the ancient world for the listener. This isn't some synthetic dye you just go buy in a craft store.
No, this pigment was known as Tyrian purple.
And to manufacture even an ounce of it, laborers had to harvest thousands upon thousands of predatory sea snails, a species called murex. They had to crack the shells by hand, extract a tiny gland, and ferment this decaying shellfish matter in massive vats in the hot sun.
The stench was supposedly just unbearable.
Oh, I can only imagine. But the resulting color was so vivid, so resistant to fading, that it became insanely expensive.
It was the ultimate status symbol. It was astronomically priced, meaning only royalty, the ultra-elite, and eventually emperors could afford to wear it.
It represented the absolute pinnacle of external success, wealth, and societal power. And Zeno has his entire fortune wrapped up in a shipment of this dye.
He's sailing across the Mediterranean when his ship is caught in a massive, violent storm.
The ship goes down. Zeno barely survives, washing ashore at the port of Piraeus near Athens, soaking wet and utterly destitute.
He stands on the beach and watches his priceless cargo of purple dye dissolve into the seawater.
The culmination of his life's work, gone in an afternoon.
And for the vast majority of people, then and now, this is a psyche-shattering event. The sudden loss of identity, wealth, and security would drive many to profound depression, perhaps even suicide.
But Zeno's reaction completely defies expectations. He doesn't collapse.
No, he wanders up into the city of Athens, finds a bookseller, and starts reading a book about Socrates.
He becomes fascinated by philosophy, begins studying under different teachers, and eventually begins lecturing on a painted porch, a stoa in Greek, founding the school of thought that would be named Stoicism.
He has his massive epiphany on the beach. The ocean took his wealth, but the ocean couldn't touch his mind.
He realized that his capacity for reason, his character, was completely independent of the purple dye.
Right.
And here is the beautiful historical irony that Robertson highlights. 500 years after Zeno loses the purple dye and invents Stoicism, we have Marcus Aurelius, a devout Stoic who is now the Emperor of Rome.
Right.
By law, Marcus is practically the only person allowed to wear the royal purple robes. He is draped in the exact material that Zeno lost.
But Marcus knows the psychological danger of that status symbol.
So in his private journals, the Meditations, he constantly strips away the cultural mythology of the robes. He writes to himself repeatedly, reminding his brain what he's actually wearing.
He calls his imperial robes sheep's wool dyed in fermented shellfish mucus.
It's just such a gross image, right?
Yes.
But it's brilliant.
It really is.
Yeah.
That phrase is a masterclass in the Stoic practice of objective representation.
Because we suffer because we add subjective value judgments and cultural narratives to raw facts, don't we?
Yes. The cultural narrative says, this robe makes you a living god, superior to all men. Marcus cuts through the narrative and isolates the raw physics of the object. It's hair from a sheep, stained with the rotting fluids of a sea snail.
By stripping it down to its biological reality, he prevents his ego from attaching to it. Because if he attaches his identity to the purple robe, what happens when someone tries to take the robe away?
We all would suffer.
Exactly. This brings us to the core mechanism of the Stoic valuing system, the ruling faculty. The Stoics believe that human beings are unique in nature because we possess reason. This rational mind is the ruling faculty.
Think of it as a king sitting in a royal court. The king doesn't do the farming or fight the wars directly. The king's sole job is to sit on the throne, look at everything presented to him, and assign it a rank and a value.
Your eyes might see a pile of gold, your stomach might feel hunger, your skin might feel the freezing mud. They present that data to the king.
Yes, and the king, your ruling faculty, decides what it means.
And if your ruling faculty is wise, it recognizes a fundamental truth. The only thing that is truly good is virtue, right? Like wisdom, justice, courage, moderation.
Exactly. And the only thing that is truly bad is vice, ignorance, injustice, cowardice, intemperance.
Everything else in the universe, gold, poverty, health, smallpox, fame, or the opinions of other people, falls into the category of indifference.
Which is a huge concept to wrap your head around.
It really is. So I want to make this real for you listening to this right now because it's easy to nod along with ancient history. Robertson uses a brilliant exercise called values clarification that therapy integrates today, but it is purely Stoic.
It's a great exercise.
So to you, the listener, I want you to mentally create two lists. Be brutally honest with yourself. Column A is the list of things you deeply desire for yourself in your life right now. What are you striving for? A promotion, a larger house in a better neighborhood.
Financial independence so you never have to worry about bills.
Right. Maybe you want to lose 10 pounds or want more followers for your business, or you just want to avoid chronic illness. Those are the desires. Now look at column B. I want you to list the qualities you most admire in other human beings. Think of your heroes. Think of the people you respect most in history or in your own family.
Why do you admire them?
You don't admire your grandfather because he had a high-yielding index fund. You admire him because he worked a grueling job without complaining to feed his kids. We admire people for their courage in the face of terror. for profound kindness to strangers, for speaking the truth when it costs them their job. Look at those two lists. The uncomfortable, glaring truth is that they almost never overlap.
It exposes a massive cognitive dissonance in how we operate. We demand virtue in our heroes, but we pursue external comfort for ourselves.
We admire the whistleblower who ruins their own career to expose corruption. We think, what a hero. But when it comes to our own lives, we desperately desire the job security, the end-of-year bonus, the approval of the corrupt boss.
Why do we exempt ourselves from the virtues we demand in others?
The Stoics look at this contradiction and pose a radical question. What would your life look like if you desired for yourself the exact same internal qualities you admire in your heroes?
What if you made the cultivation of your own courage and justice the primary goal of your existence, rather than chasing the promotion or the bigger house?
If you can align those two lists, you achieve Stoic wisdom. You stop chasing the indifference and start cultivating the only true good. But wait, let me challenge this concept of indifference.
Go for it.
Are the Stoics honestly claiming that winning the lottery and getting diagnosed with terminal cancer are exactly the same? Because that sounds delusional. Any rational person prefers health over sickness and having money over starving.
Well, the Stoics were highly observant of human nature. They weren't delusional ascetics. Zeno recognized this exact problem and introduced a new inspiration, the concept of preferred and dispreferred indifference.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, having a healthy body, a loving family, and financial stability are naturally preferred. Given the choice, a Stoic will choose health and wealth. Being tortured or starving are dispreferred.
So they do care about the external world.
They care, but with a massive unyielding caveat. Imagine an old-fashioned balance scale. On the left side of the scale, you place virtue, your moral integrity. On the right side of the scale, you place the preferred indifference.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You can pile all the gold in the Roman Empire on the right side. You can pile perfect health, global fame, and 1,000 years of life on the right side. The Stoic rule is this: no matter how much external advantage you pile on the right, it must never, ever tip the scale against virtue.
So seeking a promotion is a preferred indifferent. That's totally fine. But if getting that promotion requires you to lie, cheat a colleague, or compromise your integrity if it tips the scale, then you have made a catastrophic mathematical error in the ledger of your life.
Agreed. Precisely. You have traded the only thing of true value, your ruling faculty, your character, for a pile of sheep's wool and fermented shellfish mucus. You've bankrupted your soul for a shiny rock.
It's a flawless logical system. But again, we run into the problem of application. Understanding the scale of values while sitting in a comfortable room listening to a deep dive is easy. But how do we physically, neurologically enact this when the world violently intrudes?
That's the real test.
When you actually get the terrifying medical diagnosis, or you're caught in a mass layoff, how do you prevent the biological panic from overriding your philosophical logic? How do you grasp the nettle?
The foundational technique for dealing with actual visceral adversity is what modern therapy calls metacognition, and what the Stoics called cognitive distancing.
It is the trained ability to step back and separate your value judgment from the external sensory input. Epictetus summarized it perfectly. It is not things that upset us, but our judgments about things.
We need to break down the mechanics of how you create that distance. Robertson details the process of the premeditation of adversity, the deliberate, vivid imagination of worst-case scenarios.
Let's say you have a paralyzing fear of public speaking. You don't just tell yourself, oh, it'll be fine. You intentionally sit down and visualize the disaster. You picture yourself walking on stage, your mind goes totally blank, the audience starts whispering, someone laughs, you sweat profusely, and you walk off in total humiliation.
Modern therapy calls this imaginal exposure. Robertson outlines 6 distinct stages of spontaneous psychological change that occur when you run your brain through this crucible.
Let's analyze the biological and psychological mechanism of each stage, because this is where the rewiring actually happens.
Okay, so stage 1 is emotional habituation. When you first vividly imagine bombing that speech, your amygdala, the brain's threat center, fires up.
So you might actually start sweating in your chair.
Exactly. But the brain is an energy conservation machine. It cannot sustain a high alert panic state indefinitely if there is no actual tiger in the room.
Right.
If you hold that humiliating image in your mind long enough, the amygdala eventually exhausts its chemical reserves, the anxiety naturally plateaus and then begins to decay. The alarm bell simply runs out of battery.
Wow, the alarm battery just runs out.
Right.
Which leads to stage 2, emotional acceptance.
Yeah. As the intensity drops, you realize you survived the feeling. You stop fighting the anxiety.
Because often our suffering isn't just the fear of the event, it's the meta-fear. We panic about the fact that we are panicking.
Precisely. By sitting with the imagined humiliation, you drop the resistance. You accept that the feeling of anxiety is just a physiological sensation, and paradoxically, giving up the fight against the feeling drains its power over you.
That is so counterintuitive, but brilliant. And that opens the door for stage 3 cognitive distancing.
Because you are no longer drowning in a chemical flood of panic, the prefrontal cortex can come back online. You start to view your thoughts objectively.
Instead of thinking, I'm going to be destroyed on that stage, you observe the thought, I notice that my brain is generating the thought that I will be destroyed.
You create a buffer between your identity and the transient firing of your neurons.
It's like watching a train go by instead of being tied to the tracks.
Yeah.
Then we hit stage 4, which is my favorite word in the book, decatastrophizing.
It's the pivot from what if to so what.
Yeah.
Well, in a panic state, the brain catastrophizes. If I bomb this speech, my career is over, I'll be fired, I'll end up homeless. But once you have cognitive distance, logic intervenes.
So what if I bomb the speech? It will be deeply uncomfortable for 20 minutes. My face will be red, but I won't be fired. I will go home, eat dinner, and wake up the next day. It is a dispreferred indifferent, but it is not a catastrophe.
That sets up stage 5 reality testing. You look at the actual probabilities.
Have I ever completely forgotten how to speak English on a stage before? No. I've practiced this presentation a dozen times. The likelihood of a total cartoonish failure is statistically near 0. My brain is just telling me ghost stories.
And finally, stage 6, problem solving. Now that you have navigated through the emotional storm, you can actually use your ruling faculty constructively.
You can make a contingency plan. If I lose my place, I will pause, take a sip of water, and check my notes. You prepare for the adversity rationally.
This progression is incredible. But the Stoics didn't just practice this in their minds, they practiced it physically through stress inoculation. They understood that to handle major crises, you need mental calluses.
And you build those by voluntarily subjecting yourself to minor, harmless physical discomfort.
Seneca famously advised setting aside a few days a month to eat the cheapest food and wear rough clothing, just to remind the body that poverty is not intolerable.
Today, we might practice this by taking a cold shower, or pushing through the burning sensation in our lungs during a long run, or simply fasting for a day. You are intentionally triggering the body's complaint system, the shivering, the hunger, the fatigue, and training the ruling faculty to say, I hear you, body, but I am still in command. We are not going to panic.
It builds the neurological pathway of endurance.
But there's a trap here. If we train ourselves to realize that outcomes don't matter, that wealth is indifferent, and that even health is outside our ultimate control, doesn't that lead to total apathy?
It's kind of fear, yeah.
If I don't care about the outcome of the speech, why should I even bother preparing?
The Stoics address this brilliantly with the concept of the reserve clause, or acting fate permitting. And it revolves around one of the most elegant metaphors in ancient philosophy, Cato's archer.
Oh, I love this metaphor.
It perfectly encapsulates the balance between striving for excellence and accepting powerlessness.
So imagine you are an archer. Your objective is to hit the center of a target. As a Stoic archer, you commit 100% of your energy to the process. You select the finest, straightest arrow. You inspect the tension on the bowstring. You practice your stance until your muscles ache.
You count for the wind speed, the humidity, the distance. You draw the bow back with absolute focus and precision.
Every single one of those actions is entirely within your control. It is your domain. But the millisecond your fingers open and release that string, the arrow is gone.
It enters the domain of fate, or physics, or nature. A sudden, unpredictable gust of wind could blow it off course. The animal you are aiming at could take a sudden step.
The wood of the arrow could contain a microscopic flaw and splinter in midair. None of that is within your control.
Therefore, the Stoic archer is deeply invested in aiming perfectly, but remains completely emotionally indifferent to whether the arrow actually strikes the bullseye. You say, I will hit the target, fate permitting.
Apply this to your life. You work tirelessly on the project, you are honest, you are diligent that is aiming the bow. But whether your boss actually gives you the promotion is the arrow in flight.
It depends on budget cuts, on office politics, on the boss's mood.
If you tie your emotional stability to the promotion and the target, you will live in constant anxiety. If you tie your emotional stability to your own diligence, the aiming you are untouchable.
It completely dismantles performance anxiety and perfectionism. Your self-worth is no longer hostage to external validation.
It's a bulletproof system for dealing with the chaotic variables of the world, but I want to turn up the heat now. It's one thing to be calm when a gust of wind ruins your shot, or when a virus attacks your body. It is an entirely different level of difficulty when another human being actively, maliciously wrongs you. Let's talk about our most volatile, destructive emotion. Let's talk about anger.
The Stoics referred to anger as a temporary madness. Seneca wrote an entire book on it, viewing it as the most hideous and frenzied of all the emotions.
Robertson highlights a fascinating Stoic paradox regarding anger. They argued that the emotion of anger actually inflicts more damage on you than the external offense that triggered it.
Let's look at the physiology and psychology of that. Suppose someone steals your wallet, or a colleague maliciously lies about you to steal credit for your work. They have committed an injustice. That is a fact.
But if you allow yourself to fly into a rage, what happens? Your blood pressure spikes, cortisol floods your system, your digestion stops, you lose sleep. Psychologically, you become obsessed, bitter, and vindictive. You might even act out and do something cruel in retaliation.
The thief took some paper money. Your anger has corrupted your character, destroyed your peace of mind, and literally damaged your cardiovascular system.
The external wrong was out of your control, but the internal wrong, the self-immolation of anger, is entirely self-inflicted.
Marcus Aurelius basically says, why are you joining them in their misery? The wrongdoer is actively damaging their own moral character. Don't damage yours in response.
But let me push back here. It is incredibly difficult to just turn off anger. When someone intentionally hurts you, the anger feels justified. It feels like a necessary defense mechanism. How do you actually neutralize it in real time?
To neutralize anger at its root, the Stoics relied heavily on a concept from Socrates. Socrates posited a radical view of human nature. Nobody intentionally wants to make mistakes. Nobody wakes up in the morning and thinks, I want to be truly evil today and ruin my own soul.
Oh.
Every single human action is driven by a desire for what the person believes is good.
Okay, I have to stop you. Are you saying a thief doesn't know they are doing something wrong? Because they hide when they steal. A corrupt politician knows they are lying, they aren't innocent.
They know they are breaking societal laws, yes. But internally, they're operating on a flawed value system. The thief believes that having your money is a good thing that will secure their happiness. The correct politician believes power and wealth are the ultimate goods, outweighing honesty.
So they are factually morally wrong.
Exactly. They have confused fermented shellfish mucus for true virtue. The Stoics viewed this moral ignorance as a severe handicap. It is equivalent to physical blindness. A malicious person is literally blind to the nature of true good and true evil.
That is a staggering perspective shift.
Think about the practical application. If you were walking down the sidewalk and a physically blind person accidentally bumps into you and spills hot coffee all over your shirt, you might be startled, but you wouldn't fly into a murderous rage.
Right. You would immediately recognize their limitation. You'd probably help them up.
The Stoics are arguing that when someone lies to you, insults you, or steals from you, they are morally blind. They're bumping into your life because they cannot see the truth of virtue.
When you truly internalize that they are acting out of profound ignorance, your anger naturally dissolves and is replaced by pity.
You don't scream at a toddler for failing to understand calculus. You shouldn't scream at an adult for failing to understand virtue.
Marcus Aurelius used this exactly. He countered anger with the virtues of kindness and fairness. He would remind himself that the people plotting against him in the Senate were just mistaken about what was important in life.
But what makes Marcus so compelling is that he didn't do this from a place of arrogant superiority. He was brutally self-aware.
He wrote in his journal that sometimes the only thing keeping him from committing a terrible vice wasn't his pure heart, but simply his fear of losing his reputation.
He recognized that sometimes one vice, cowardice, or fear of public opinion, was the only thing holding back another vice. By acknowledging his own capacity for moral blindness, it became impossible for him to harbor deep hatred for the blindness of others.
But I'm going to push back hard on this again, because this is where Stoicism often gets critiqued. If I adopt this mindset, if I look at a tyrant or an abuser or a corporate fraudster and I just say, oh, they are morally blind, I pity them, doesn't that lead to extreme passivity?
I see what you mean.
Doesn't that just give evil people a free pass to run wild and hurt the innocent while I sit quietly feeling pity for them? Does Stoicism demand we just excuse malicious behavior as a handicap?
That is the most common misunderstanding of Stoicism, and it conflates internal emotional state with external action. Let's look at Marcus Aurelius again. He didn't sit in Rome pitying the Germanic tribes while they slaughtered his citizens.
He put on armor, rode to the frontier, and fought brutal, bloody wars to protect the empire.
Exactly. He acted as a supreme judge, sentencing criminals to death or exile. A Stoic takes vigorous, decisive action to ensure justice in the world. You restrain the dangerous person. You fire the toxic employee. You put the abuser in prison.
But, and this is the razor-thin, crucial distinction, you do it without anger. You leave the internal wrong with the wrongdoer.
Think of a highly skilled surgeon removing a malignant tumor. The surgeon recognizes the tumor is deadly and must be cut out to save the patient. But the surgeon doesn't hate the tumor.
They don't scream at the cancer cells for being malicious.
They operate with a calm, rational, steady hand. If the surgeon was blinded by rage at the tumor, their hand would shake, they would make mistakes, they would harm the patient.
When you confront injustice, you must act like the surgeon. Take the necessary action to protect society, but do not let the wrongdoer's vice penetrate your own character. Hatred only weakens your ability to aim the arrow of justice.
That is a phenomenal clarification. You shoot the arrow, you enforce justice, but you remain internally untouched by the poison of hatred.
But even knowing all this, in the heat of the moment, when someone gets under your skin, the emotional flare-up is so fast. To counter that instantaneous reaction, Robertson introduces one of the most expansive, almost cinematic psychological techniques in the entire ancient toolkit. It's called the view from above.
Pierre Hadot identified this as a central practice in almost all ancient philosophical schools, and it is a travesty that it's largely absent from modern cognitive therapy. It is the ultimate antidote to narrow, ego-driven anxiety.
It's essentially a guided meditation in radical perspective shifting. Marcus Aurelius would use this constantly. When the politics of the Roman Senate were driving him crazy, or when the sheer scale of the Antonine Plague felt emotionally crushing, he would mentally elevate his perspective.
He would imagine his consciousness leaving his body and floating high overhead, looking down as the gods on Mount Olympus might see the world.
Let me walk you through how you might actually practice this today. Start right where you are. Close your eyes and visualize your immediate physical location. You see yourself sitting in your room listening to this deep dive. Then, in your mind's eye, you zoom out. You see the roof of your house, your street. You keep pulling back.
You see your entire city, the grid of roads, millions of people rushing around in their cars, stressed about being 5 minutes late to a meeting.
You pull back further. You see the entire continent. You see the massive weather systems moving across the oceans. You see the Earth suspended in the black vacuum of space, a tiny blue marble.
And you don't just zoom out spatially, you zoom out temporally.
Exactly. From that vantage point in space, you look at time. You watch the rise and fall of the Roman Empire in a blink of an eye. You see the tectonic plates shifting, the era of the dinosaurs, the molten birth of the planet, and you look forward into the infinite, stretching future where the sun will eventually swallow the Earth.
It's breathtaking to imagine.
When you hold that vast, staggering scale in your mind, suddenly, that guy who cut you off in traffic this morning, that snarky email from your coworker, the fact that your flight is delayed by 2 hours, it just evaporates.
It forces the ruling faculty to recognize the objective triviality of our daily friction. From the view from above, borders disappear. Invading armies look like colonies of ants fighting over a crumb. Human lifetimes are just brief flashes of light in the dark.
It induces a profound, almost overwhelming emotional equanimity. It dilutes the intensity of our petty angers down to zero. It shrinks the ego down to its proper microscopic size.
It's the philosophical equivalent of what astronauts call the overview effect. When astronauts go to the International Space Station and look down at the Earth, they frequently report a massive cognitive shift. They return with a deeply ingrained sense of unity, a loss of nationalistic tribalism, and a profound peacefulness.
The Stoics discovered a way to hack the human brain to achieve the overview effect purely through imagination 2 millennia before we built rockets. It proves that the technology of human resilience hasn't fundamentally changed because the neurobiology of the human mind hasn't changed.
We are still fighting the exact same battles with our fears, our unchecked desires, and our destructive anger that a Roman emperor was fighting in his tent on the freezing frontier.
The software glitches are the same. The external world has given us smartphones and airplanes instead of chariots and scrolls, but the internal mechanics, the way a belief triggers an emotion, is identical.
The tools that Marcus Aurelius used, stripping away the cultural narrative to see the shellfish mucus, distancing himself from his thoughts, mentally rehearsing worst-case scenarios to exhaust the amygdala, and taking the cosmic view from above are just as sharp today as they were in 180 AD.
They form the foundation of our best modern clinical therapies. But as Robertson beautifully illustrates, when you don't just use them for a 12-week clinical intervention, but adopt them as a lifelong operating system, they offer something far deeper than just symptom relief.
They offer true character.
They turn us from librarians of the mind, safely debating definitions, into warriors of the mind, equipped to handle whatever fate fires at us. As we wrap up this deep dive today, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over as you step back into your day. We've established that your emotions are not caused by the world. They are entirely dictated by your core beliefs. And your core beliefs are shaped by what you value. Therefore, every single moment of anger, anxiety, or frustration you feel today is not a punishment. It is a compass. It is a psychological compass pointing directly toward a false belief you hold about the world. It is pointing at something entirely outside of your control that your ruling faculty has mistakenly labeled as good or bad. So the next time your heart rate spikes over an email, or a piece of gossip, or a financial setback, pause, look at the compass, ask yourself, what false crown are you wearing right now that is really just sheep's wool and shellfish mucus? Don't forget to follow us and subscribe to stay updated on our latest episodes and never miss a step in this odyssey of thought. Until next time, keep questioning.